Hello, my name is Jules McKean, and thank you for joining us on the Odgers Berndtson One Question series for the media industry. I'm Jules McKean and I run the media practice for Odgers Berndtson Executive Search out of London. I am delighted for our inaugural summer series question to be joined by Maria Purcell at Reddit. Maria, thanks for joining us.
Hello, hi, thanks for having me.
Maria has just recently joined Reddit, which would be quite interesting to talk to her about how she's found it kind of coming on board remotely. And she heads up SMB and mid-market sales for EMEA and Australia at Reddit. And before that, Maria headed up commercial and partnership roles at the likes of Facebook and Uber. So she's got a very good spread of different roles there for us to kind of have as a starting point to our question, which is, what will our industry be talking about in 12 months' time? But first of all, you might want to start with today, Maria, and how it's been joining Reddit in the kind of, I want to say, the latter stages of the pandemic, but maybe that's not just you.
Yeah, I mean, it's been such a ride. I was lucky, unlucky, I don't know, depends how you look at it, but I was actually on maternity leave during the pandemic, so I didn't, experience that kind of lifting up of my whole work world and having to transfer it in the height to home in the height of the pandemic. I mean, I was going through my own kind of with a newborn, which was challenging enough. But so it was quite strange to go back to work remotely off of maternity leave, but then also to change jobs and launch into a whole new platform company completely remotely. So I felt like there was no walk through the office on the first day, and there was no, I just turned my computer on in the same room that I've been in for a few months, which is
hope the children don't come in, I should imagine, like many of us.
Yeah, I think we are super lucky because the top floor of our house is basically mummy and daddy's offices. So there is like a no-go area for work. But even then, I mean, you have children yourself, nothing will stop them from, wanting to introduce themselves to a crowd of people. So everybody got introduced to me at Reddit, but then also my cats and my toddlers and my babies. So they got the full.
Well, we're going to plow through this then, Maria, so that we get no additional kind
They're
of.
all out the house. We are safe.
Animals.
We are safe. Yeah. So I think, but it's been really interesting because to answer your question in terms of what's going to be the big thing that we're all focusing over the next 12 months, in 12 months time, the word I think that has been most used, or I've most heard kind of in my world, is community. It's really just been everywhere, in every kind of asset, in real life, online. Community has been the first thing that people have put forward when they are communicating, especially brands. Every brand now has a community. Every person that's talking has a community, right? And as global issues get bigger and bigger, not just pandemic, but social issues, political issues, it really just seems like people are wanting the internet to get smaller, or they are wanting to have these intimate spaces whereas normally it was kind of quite big and what's in the world and what's going on. It feels like it's kind of shrinking a little bit, and these passionate communities and these kind of micro communities that you're finding are really then leaking back into the real world. 2020 was absolutely a catalyst.
Yeah,
absolutely. There's no doubt about it, for a lot of things, a lot of just change management in general. But for digital and online communities, I think I've always worked in tech. Tech has always been like kind of the main kind of industry that I've worked in, and we've seen communities steadily increase. It's always been something that's been on the rise. It's not new, but 2020 really was that catalyst, and it's turned it into kind of hyper growth, and it doesn't look like it's slowing down anytime soon.
And you're going to be seeing it absolutely firsthand with Reddit, aren't you? It's just absolutely gone crazy in terms of
I think
the passion and the involvement and the globalization of it all.
it just seems like it's taken on, it feels like we've kind of shed the old communities that maybe me and you and our first kind of foray into the internet is like communities 2.0. It's like souped up communities where they are driving that real world action, they are taking on, they are educating, they're inspiring, right? And I think that is something that brands will latch onto. That is something that brands need to learn from. One of the things I love actually about Reddit is a lot of those communities are not owned by the brands. The brands have to actually join in with the communities that have already been formed about
That's
their
interesting, isn't it?
yeah.
That is interesting.
Yeah,
Because that's the kind of the other way around to what it's previously been. And actually, at the Edelman brand trust index was really interesting the other day, and they actually have seen a real shift towards brands needing to demonstrate trust, and actually, to your point about, the communities are there to serve that community first and foremost, and actually brands are going to have to find really interesting ways to kind of have permission to play in that, I guess.
Yeah, and I think as the conversation, as well, the focus shifts from more of a who are we speaking to, and to more of what are we speaking about. And I think, with the privacy and cookies and all of that kind of stuff really kind of taking on a different level in marketing and media nowadays, the what is actually now starting to be a lot more important than the who.
Do you think that do you think that we have underestimated the power of online communities? Quite aside from the noise that gets talked about people who are extreme on Twitter and as individuals,
Yeah.
but actually proper homegrown communities. Do you think the world has underestimated them, and maybe this has sort of accelerated them into the mainstream?
Yeah, I do. I think it comes back to that point of this kind of 2.0 community, because I think a lot of it was maybe seen as like the kind of, you were talking about like the noise of online chatter and conversation. It really didn't feel like it had spaces. It was kind of just kind of chatter that was being thrown out there. And I think as the internet has evolved, and as we have been kind of thrust more into these digital spaces, especially because of the last year, I think that the type of conversations that are happening and the type of action that is happening, I mean, obviously Wall Street bets is something that everybody knows about, unless you've been, living under a rock, but everybody knows about Wall Street bets. And that was a real demonstration of the power of a very much an underestimated group of those online communities driving that real world impact, but also influence and education. A lot of people who had never even thought about investing, or thought, oh, I don't earn enough, or who I can buy stocks, I don't understand it, actually starting to think, okay, how do I get involved in this world, and starting to understand and ask more questions. And I think that's just a real good example of how you see something that is maybe been quite underestimated as like quite thousands of people in that community, but really proliferate into the real world and actually have that impact. And only after joining Reddit was it clear. I've always been a Redditor. I've always kind of been, and I mean, I'm a parent, so I'm constantly just asking questions to as many people that will help me answer them. But it was clear to me after joining Reddit that it's not unique to the GameStop situation. It's actually something we see on the platform every day. Over 100,000 communities. My favorite one actually is I'm addicted to skincare. I love a good cream or recommendation. My husband's always going on because I buy far too much. But in the skincare addiction community that they have on Reddit, the subreddit, they actually all came together to put together and send care packages to the key workers who were starting to get abrasions on their face because of the masks and the PPI that they had to wear. And I can't think of a more beautiful kind of example of just humans really showing up.
That's lovely.
Through the power online. Yeah, it's just such a lovely, and that's exactly what they should be doing, right? It's exactly how we as people have that power and can make a difference when in a situation where you do feel pretty powerless, I think, to help.
It's so interesting, there's a sort of, sounds like a real shift in language. And I don't know if this is overstating the matter, that if we think about if we're talking about communities, online communities in a 12 months time, that actually historically when you think online community you think of the word policing. Perhaps it's now about activating and enabling. And it sounds, you know, what you've talked about there is taking, you know, meaningful, you know, shared passions and finding ways to take that offline instead of offline people in the early days of the internet, you know, kind of people you know in real life on Facebook, suddenly you try to find them online. It's almost like the reversal of that. People that you've created affinities with, perhaps, that you shared values, shared interests. Did you think that's fair?
And I think again, I think it's that shared interests piece is more what's becoming important versus who's sharing it. Because I think so much has been placed on the who, you know, influencer culture, and, you know, don't post that, I don't want that living there because who's going to see it, and you know, a recruiter might be looking at my profile, I don't want to all this kind of stuff. I don't upload that picture, which is quite funny because I think at the beginning of the internet, and like the beginning, I remember I was on MySpace and all that kind of stuff, just everything went on. I was like, oh yeah, sure, whole camera reel, I'm going to upload that. You know, whereas now it's very curated and selected, and almost kind of, I think I saw an article the other day about the burnout that creators are feeling of having to curate, keep, moderate, and be online all the time and kind of have this facade. Whereas I think the trend that we are seeing a lot of, and especially on Reddit, where the users are anonymous, I can never say it, the anonymity of the platform actually drives the authenticity, because there's no reason not to be authentic. There's no reason not to be honest, because, you know, what's the worst that's going to happen?
That is so interesting. That's a sort of kind of the flip, because again, with anonymity up until now, it's been the negative side of anonymity. People can get away with saying whatever they want, but that is quite interesting. It's a sort of anonymity as a sort of positive enabler to freedom of expression. And the flip side of that, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think, you know, we have seen that in the last, you know, with Brexit in this country, with like lots of different things that have been a surprise to people. Oh wow, because they haven't been having those conversations, or they haven't been exposed to those conversations, because they just have their friends that they know in their bubble online, and they haven't been able to have this kind of richness of diversity of conversation and thought, and see actually what it looks like just in a kind of more accessible way. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that. That's not going to stop, but the way that we moderate that, the way that we kind of show up, the thing that makes these communities so special is how authentic they are and how helpful they are. And people go there because they know they're going to get questions, or they know they're going to learn something. So if somebody comes in there that isn't meant to be there, or is disrespectful, or if a brand balls in there with a terrible ad, or kind of, they will get booted straight out. And this kind of self-moderation and this, the self-moderation of our platform, definitely, but in general, the internet, these kind of stewards of these communities, we're really starting to see that take on its own life, and I think it's great. I think you see it all the time if people come into, you know, the gardening community. I'm an avid gardener. I was very proud of my 2 strawberries that bloomed.
I think I have 4, so I was very
2 strawberries got eaten straight away. but if, in the gardening community, and if somebody comes in there and doesn't talk about gardening, everyone's like, you need to go to this group and talk about it.
Wow.
You know, this is the gardening place. It doesn't matter who you are, if you're talking about gardening, this is the place for you. So, you know, I think we're just going to see more and more of that. And I think GWI, it was GWI, they launched the Era of We report. And if you haven't read that, it's just super interesting and super helpful to get a guide, especially if you're working in branding or marketing, to really understand this shift that's happening. And we loved it because they surveyed actually some of the Reddit community and people who use Reddit, and it was something like 48% found sites like Reddit more authentic and respectful environments than your traditional social media sites. And I think that kind of goes to what you were saying earlier about the, people underestimating, because they have this view of, not all of them are equal. It's not the same kind of conversations that happen on the same platforms, but you are seeing this different shift of, mindless scrolling and kind of trolling and chatter to rich, interesting, and, very powerful communities. And I think, we're going to see like kind of less of this and more of this.
That is so interesting. That is so interesting, Maria, because presumably the place for pros on the site, on places like Reddit, enables a subtlety that perhaps the more antagonistically binary kind of sites don't permit you to do.
Yeah. I mean, there's no text limit. There's no kind of it's free form. You can kind of say whatever you want it. So it's definitely a richer level. And I think I'm really excited to see what new stuff will come out of that, and how we'll be kind of pushing ourselves and brands and governments and everything to really embrace that and learn from it. So
that's a big one. That's brilliant. Thank you so much, Maria. So in 12 months' time, we should see some real, even further and deeper articulations of me to we, and that's a brilliant place for us to finish up the one question for today. And thank you so much. What a great observation, and something that I think we can all go and start to look at in our own lives and observe coming out of the pandemic, and to your point, seeing how the online comes offline and the good that can kind of engender, as well as sort of all the bad publicity it's had up until now.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me. It's I ironed my shirt and everything for you, so
well, very nice, Maria. Thank you so much. Lovely to see you. Thanks for joining us. Take care.
Okay, bye.
Bye.